千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Daodejing by Lao Tzu. As always, I would like to extend a warm welcome to one and all. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. So now, let's summarize what we have discussed so far in terms of matching everything together, having it all make sense as a chapter overall. This has implications to leadership in all spheres of life. At the state level, at the business level, at the personal level, family level, social level, everything. So I think this will be very helpful to get into and to explain in great detail. So first of all, let's focus on the issue of acceptance, accepting humiliation and misfortune. Question number one, let's make sure we understand how is this acceptance connected to water. And as a quick review, we talked about how nothing in the world is softer or weaker than water, but nothing is better at overcoming the hard and strong. Okay, well, again, how is that linked to the acceptance of humiliation and misfortune? Well, first of all, water is seen as soft and weak, but it's actually powerful. So we've reiterated the same point quite a few times. And then Lao Tzu makes the point. Everybody in the world knows this, but cannot put into practice. So then when we say that, when we talk about everybody in the world knows about water, but then cannot put it into practice, we're saying, well, there's awareness. Few people can apply it to life. Now, it is becoming a little bit clearer what the connection is because as we look around in life, we see that most people, so many people out there, the conventional thinking, they are pointing the blame as a default action. Don't we see that? Just by looking around, we see there's so much blaming when something goes wrong. Nobody wants to own up to anything. Everybody is pointing their fingers to somebody else, some other factor. Oh, it wasn't me. It was all because of so-and-so that caused the problem in the first place. I try to help, but that person did not follow the rules. And therefore, we can conclude positively, indeed, few people can apply the humility of water to life. So there's more. The reason why people point the blame at someone else or some other factor external to them is because they feel like admitting mistakes is perceived as weak, just like water is perceived as soft and weak. As we have seen, Lao Tzu provides the complete opposite insights. Lao Tzu wrote, "The one who accepts the humiliation of the state is called its master. The one who accepts the misfortune of the state becomes king of the world. So Lao Tzu is definitely not saying that by admitting mistakes, taking on responsibility, you would be weak. Lao Tzu is saying that you would be strong, a strong leader, a master, the king, because in reality, taking responsibility demonstrates courage and confidence. Therefore, you're not being seen as weak, even though the ignorance may perceive you that way. A leader that can be courageous and confident, that is the leader who exhibits strength, a hidden kind of strength, not visible to those who don't understand, but easily visible to those who understand the Tao, like water. So this is the connection between the second half of the chapter to the beginning of the chapter. So this can be applied in all aspects of life, as I mentioned, including business. As an exercise, let's go ahead and try to map it from the ancient rulers to a business leader in modern times. So you have seen that the ancient ruler, if that ruler was wise, would handle humiliation of the states, would be responsible for that, would rally the people together, would rebuild the strength of the kingdom to be stronger than ever. This is easy to map. The business leader may encounter a situation where the company is in crisis management, and the causes for the crisis are many possibilities. It could be a public relations crisis, image, reputational crisis. It could be a financial crisis. It could be competition driving down prices or costs going up. It could be any kind of crisis. The business leader, if that leader is wise, would take responsibility for that, would own up to the mistakes. Now, as we talk about it like this, that seems easy to understand. And yet, Lao Tzu says everybody knows, but cannot put it into practice. He's right. According to one particular study, widely quoted, as much as 76% of people in the workplace are not willing to assume responsibility for a problem. So that's just a little more than 3/4 of the workforce. And if the workers are that way, it applies to the managers as well. If you are part of management, trying to evade responsibility has even more serious consequences. But if you take on the responsibility, then you can create a plan. You can announce proactive steps to address the issue. Like, here's how we make sure that this current deplorable situation can never happen again. The outcome is that you regain the trust of employees and customers, corresponding to ancient times when the ruler is able to have the trust and love and support of the subjects, the people. So easy to map. Even though relatively few people do it, it is today the most accomplished people who understand this and who will put it into practice. So, conclusion. What Lao Tzu is trying to say can be summarized into the following bullet points. no matter what happens in life, we are fully in control of our response to it. And this is why Lao Tzu talks about humiliation and misfortune, because we can respond to humiliation and misfortune in the best possible way, and that best possible way is not evasion. Just as a reminder, humiliation is something that can happen anywhere along the journey. It's pretty severe, and most people would point to humiliation as the worst possible thing that can happen, because not only is it a setback, but it's public. It is seen by others. It tarnishes one's image. Humiliating. How humiliating is that? And there are many people, perhaps ourselves included, who will do anything to avoid humiliation. Then the other category is misfortune. At first glance, misfortune doesn't seem to be as severe as something like humiliation, which is not only misfortune, but also public knowledge. Misfortune, however, is something that can happen even more often than humiliation. It could be some kind of negativity, and it may or may not be known by others. It can be present before and during the journey. This is why I say humiliation is a subset of misfortune. Not all misfortunes are humiliating. Some are setbacks or delays, and the severe ones are humiliating. But then, misfortune is at a higher level than humiliation. The one with the ability to frame the best response to them will ultimately win. This is true even if the negativity was 100% caused by others. Even when you have nothing to do with the problem, it was caused by somebody else, you can still frame the best possible response to them, whether it is humiliating or just a misfortune. It is therefore still your responsibility to frame the best response, to accept it and take action. And when you bring ability to frame response together, you can reverse the two, juxtapose the two, bring them together to get responsibility. This is not a new concept. This idea of total responsibility has been with us since ancient times, and it's been around East and West. There's a long tradition of Western wisdom that talks about this. And in Western philosophy, everything is spelled out clearly. If you read the ancient works, you can't miss the point that's being made. Nevertheless, every generation in the Western world rediscovers this truth or this wisdom, this principle anew. Let me ask everyone a question. Why is that? If this is something that's been in the wisdom traditions of the world, East and West, and yet every generation is discovering it as if it was for the first time. Well, the reason is because that which is provided to you, you tend to forget. That which is uncovered by you, you tend to retain. If I just give you something, you don't value it quite as much. You can disregard. It was given to you. You didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to work for it. You didn't have to earn it. But if you had to do the work to dig for that, to put it together, to uncover it, to discover it, then it is a treasure that you cherish. And this is a treasure of wisdom. Let me talk a little bit about the wisdom traditions in the philosophical aspects from the West. There's books written about this. There's a book called Radical Responsibility, and it derives from this concept. I'll just bring up two major philosophies in the West that talk about this. One is called Existentialism. In Existentialism, it talks about, number one, you are responsible for everything in your own experience, even when it is not your fault. Now, this is a revelation to people who encounter it for the first time, but it is a truth about life, and it's an amazing insight. And this starts with the idea that we're constantly making choices. We're constantly choosing. There's a necessity of choosing your perception, your actions. It's a massive load on us mentally. This is a constant responsibility we have to take on. It can be terrifying. It is the reason why a lot of times as human beings, we want to figure out ways to put this burden of responsibility on other people. And that's why we say, well, it's not my fault. Somebody else made me do it. Somebody else screwed up. I was just following the rules. I was just doing what I was told. It's not my fault. We just love to blame other people. That's the way it seems, because it seems to be human nature to blame, to cast blame. And we do it in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's not that there's a problem, but that there's something that's not quite right. And we say things like, well, everybody else is doing it, so I should do it too. You see what's happening there is that you are assigning the responsibility to everybody else. Maybe you're not pointing at a specific person, there's no finger of accusation, but you're still shifting the responsibility elsewhere. It's more subtle. So this is called living in bad faith. That you are not being genuine, you're not being real or true to yourself. The opposite in existentialism is to say, well, it's the flip side. It's to say, well, I need to be conscious of my decisions and make the choices that I make based on the principles that I have worked out for myself, my values. You have to do this every single moment, and you also have to be aware that you're making choices in these moments. Be willfully, mindfully making those choices. This is the flip side, and it's living in authenticity. So I think it's easy to relate to this, to identify with this, because it's about figuring out about yourself, knowing yourself. What do I care about? What are my values? What am I willing to take a stand for? And make that choice when the time comes. That is living in authenticity. And then lastly, in this philosophy, there's a distinction between being responsible and being at fault. This is a good point. It's a point that we're going to come back to, but let me explain what the fault fallacy is. People oftentimes assume that taking on responsibility is to take on fault. And philosophers will point out it's actually not the same thing. you can be responsible for something, it doesn't mean you are at fault. For instance, if you were involved in an auto accident and it was caused by the other driver who was driving drunk, so the drunk driver really has the responsibility and the fault, but you too have a responsibility. It's your responsibility to recover from your injuries, to get well. If you were hurt, you need to rehabilitate, you need to go through physical therapy. That's your responsibility. You may not be at fault, but you're responsible. So I hope that clarifies the distinction between the two. So just because you say I'm responsible, it doesn't mean you are admitting to being at fault. So that makes it easier to assume responsibility. The other major philosophy in the West that addresses this issue is Stoicism. And it's even at a level beyond what existentialism talks about. It begins by stating that we all have absolute responsibility, 100%, no matter what. This is a more extreme view. Indeed, there's a book by the title of Extreme Ownership that talks about aspects of this. Just like there's another book called Radical Responsibility that talks about the ideas that we just covered in existentialism. Let's talk about extreme ownership. Absolute responsibility means you are absolutely responsible for yourself mentally and physically. Mentally, it covers your thoughts, your beliefs, values, emotions, your internal self-talk, your perspectives about the outside world. These are all happening in your mind. You must take absolute responsibility for all of it because nobody but you can think those thoughts. That makes sense. You must also take responsibility absolutely for yourself physically. This means your actions and responses. What you do, what you say, how you respond. This is true because you are the only one who can order yourself to do or say something. You have absolute responsibility for that. Nobody else can say something for you or do something on your behalf. At the end of the day, it's down to you lifting your hand to get something done, to pick something up, to give something away, and so on. That's point number one. So it's even more extreme than what we have talked about. Point number two, complaints and criticisms. To be a true Stoic is to eliminate all the negativity associated with complaints, accusations, criticisms, condemnations, or scolding. When you say someone is Stoic, that is a person who does not complain. The reason why a Stoic will refrain from these things, will eliminate them completely, because there are distractions from the present moment. Right here, right now, rather than to complain about something, we could all be using the time and energy for something more constructive. Any energy that goes into a negative action, like complaining or criticizing, is energy wasted, will produce no useful results. So that's main point number two. Main point number three is on the positive front, choices and decisions. We pick and choose, we have options, we make decisions, we decide on this or that, we decide on a course of action, which way to travel, which path to take. So in Stoicism, these are pointed out as levers of power. You have total control over these levers. Think of them as metaphorical levers. These levers are right in front of you. They are within easy reach. But when you were blind, you did not see them. You did not realize that they've always been right there, right in front of you all this time. But with the illumination of philosophy, you can see them. All you have to do is to reach out with your hand, grab the levers, and press down on the levers. It could not be easier. So choices and decisions are the levers of power. Last point. Change and improvement. Why do we go through all this? Well, it's because acceptance of the above is what leads to the possibility of change. Inability to accept the above leads to the impossibility of change. Therefore, a Stoic will say, it's my fault. Admitting fault opens the door to improvement. It also earns you the respect from your peers and trust from the people you lead. That's Stoicism. There's been historical debates between the different schools of thought that I have just outlined for everyone. There's going to be people who say, well, it doesn't make sense to admit fault when it's not your fault, etc. We're about to elevate this to the next level by talking about the Tao. We've gone through the Western ideas. As I said, the Western concepts are spelled out very clearly. If you read the ancient books in Western traditions on philosophy, you can't miss it. It's right there. In the Eastern philosophy, it's different. It's even more extreme than the extreme version that I have just shared with you, if that is possible. And it is not spelled out. There isn't a one collected single place where you will see it spelled out step by step. All the pieces are out there, but you have to put them together yourself. So this goes back to what I said. That which is provided to you, you tend to forget. That which is uncovered by you, you tend to retain. This is my journey, you guys. In my journey, I've had some great teachers. The two teachers who have the most impact on me would be Grandmaster Cai and Grandmaster Ching. I've talked about these Tao masters before. All of my teachers had one thing in common. They all emphasized the importance of finding your own path. Why is it important to do that? Well, the path that you discover yourself goes with the second line. That which is uncovered by you, you tend to retain. A treasure that you had to dig for, you will cherish. So when the pieces of this puzzle are put together, it is even more absolute, more radical, more extreme than the Western version you have just heard. And it's even a little closer to the ultimate truth of existence, because it is the Tao. Let me start with that. Tao, and I use the yin and yang symbol to represent that, of course. Yin and yang, what does it show us? Well, among other things, it is showing us that nothing is absolutely pure. There's yin within yang, yang within yin. There's no 100% anything. Everything has a little bit of the complement. So there's the dot, there's the little dot. In a situation where it seems clear that it's all caused by someone else, the yin and yang symbol informs you that there's still a part that is your responsibility, however tiny it may be. Now, You can, for instance, talk about traffic. Nobody can do anything about the traffic. It's all about all the drivers together. So I'm not responsible for that. I'm not responsible for the traffic. Looking at the yin and yang symbol, if you meditate on this, you will come upon the realization, well, first of all, your car is one of the many on the road, so you're part of it already. And number two, you have agency. You always have the choice of hitting the road earlier to account for traffic and therefore not be late to your destination. Same with the weather. You're not in control of the weather, but you are in control of yourself, which means you can always pay attention to the weather forecast, and you can always prepare for rain gear when it is necessary to do so, whether that's an umbrella or something else. So you always have a part in it, however little that may be. If the government has set financial policy with disastrous impact on your life, you may say, well, that's the government. I've got nothing to do with that. It's not my responsibility. Look at the yin and yang symbol. You're automatically pointing a finger at some external agency. But the dot in the yin and yang symbol is going to inform you, well, did you vote? Did you vote for the policy you wanted? It could represent a vote out of millions of votes, so that's a tiny part, but it's a part of the votes nevertheless. And if you did not vote, that's your responsibility there. It can also represent your voice prior to voting to speak up, to oppose a bad policy. Did you do that? It could be to perceive that there's going to be this bad thing coming and be ready for it. This goes to the second point in the Tao, equally important, and that's the small. What do I mean by that? There is specific reference, multiple references in the Daodejing about paying attention to the small and before bad things happen, before manifestation. Specifically, in chapter 64 of the Daodejing, it says, when it is peaceful, it is easy to maintain. When it shows no signs, it is easy to plan. When it is fragile, it is easy to break. When it is small, it is easy to scatter. Act on it when it has not yet begun. Treat it when it is not yet chaotic. So this is just saying, nip it in the bud. When the problem is still small, easily dealt with, take care of the problem. It is also saying, before something occurs, see it coming so you can prepare for that. That's exactly what it means when it says, when it shows no signs, it is easy to plan. If you did not see it coming, that's actually on you, because you've been given the ability to perceive and to reason, to anticipate, to predict. When the problem was small, but you didn't take any action, that's on you. So in both cases, you have responsibility. In the drunk driver scenario that resulted in a car accident, it could have been something that you thought about, and there could have been some things that was possible for you to do. You could have seen, for instance, the drunken driver coming from far away, that he was driving erratically, having trouble keeping to the lanes, and therefore you give that person a wide berth. That is to act on a problem before it is a problem. You could have already seen that, for instance, knowing from past patterns that every year after holiday festivities late at night, as people are returning from celebration, many of the drivers on the road are a little bit drunk or a lot drunk. And therefore, it is wise for you to take on the responsibility to come up with a different plan to avoid that scenario. Looking at the yin and yang symbol will help you see that. That's not all. There's also Zen. Zen is the fusion of Buddhist teachings and Tao teachings. It comes from the Tao tradition as much as it does from the teachings of Buddhism, the Dharma of Buddhism. And it makes an even more striking point. First of all, it is pointed out that we are all connected at a fundamental level. We have the illusion of separateness in this material world, but in reality, we are one fundamentally. We are individual molecules of water, but we are together in the infinite ocean of the Tao. We are the same ocean. What affects you affects me and everyone else. We can't get away from that. This is the reason why the sixth patriarch of the Zen tradition, Huineng, before he became the patriarch of that spiritual tradition, he showed up at the place belonging to his predecessor, the fifth patriarch. And the fifth patriarch looked at him and said, well, you're a barbarian from the south. What makes you think that you can become a monk like me from the northern parts? So in the ancient times, in the northern parts of China and the southern parts of China, people appear differently, just as they do today. In Europe, Northern Europeans tend to be taller, Southern Europeans tend to be shorter. Same thing in China. So there's definitely some bias in ancient China as well for the taller people of the north compared to the shorter people of the south. We generally only see people in the West. It's mostly the people from the southern parts that have become immigrants. So there's the misconception that they're all very short, when in fact you're just seeing a small part, a small sample of the overall population. So the fifth patriarch said, well, you're a short little barbarian. How can you become a monk like us tall northerners? And Huineng responded, there may be physical difference between north and south, but in Buddha nature, there is no north and south. In Buddha nature, we are united as one. He was right. The fifth patriarch was only testing him and knew right away that this young man standing before him was wise and could have a grand future. But this is the truth in the Zen, that there's no separation when you come right down to the ultimate level of reality, the ultimate foundation of everything. That's point number one. Point number two is self-nature itself. This is where we really drop the hammer on this philosophical question. In all the previous discussions that we had about taking on responsibility, whether it's radical responsibility, extreme responsibility, or absolute responsibility, you could always have someone who say, well, that doesn't make any sense, because what if you were born into a bad situation? Your Tao doesn't work because there's no way you could have seen it coming. You weren't born yet. There's no way you could have done anything about it when the problem was small. You weren't born yet. But here you are, born into a very negative, dysfunctional, maybe even abusive situation, how is that your responsibility? That doesn't make any sense. There is no dot in the yin and yang symbol in that particular context. And this is the most important thing, the most important point that I want to make with everyone today. The point is, no, this teaching holds even in the above case, the above scenario. Now, we've already talked about how our physical appearances may be different, our skin may be different complexion, but our essential nature, the self-nature, is one and the same. That's one huge part of the puzzle. Here's the next part. As the truth about who you are, your true self, your true nature, called self-nature in the Zen tradition, you are eternal. This is one of the insights that the sixth patriarch Huang talked about as well, that as the truth of who you are not born or extinguished. You have always existed. The truth is, you are eternal. Right now, this lifetime, this is not your only existence. You have always existed. Furthermore, in the Zen tradition, in Buddhism, we speak of attaining enlightenment over multiple lifetimes. What that means is that in your repeated existence in the material plane, you're here to learn a series of lessons working toward enlightenment. It is not the work of a single lifetime, but over multiple lifetimes. Every time you manifest, you learn different lessons, and you yourself played a central role in determining what your lessons will be this time. Therefore, you cannot say, well, I was born into a bad situation, therefore I cannot be responsible for that. You had a hand in it, even though you have no recollection of determining that this was the lesson you needed to learn. You needed to come into this bad situation in order to master the lesson of absolute, complete, total, ultimate responsibility. The conclusion is inescapable. There is no getting away from the Tao of responsibility. You must learn. You must take control. You must take charge. This is why it is so powerful. It gives you all the power you need to make any changes you want. There are people out there who understand this intuitively. They may not have seen this kind of assemblage of the teachings put together in this way, but they know it. And that's how they're able to rise above their circumstances, despite extreme poverty, extreme negativity, extreme dysfunction, extreme abuse. No matter what it is, they can rise above. This is why I say misfortune is at a level above humiliation, because misfortune may be present even before you start on your journey. Now it all makes sense. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.